the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience. Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, continuing our coverage of the 2018 fantasy football season. Don't forget, we're presented by Yaga. Get it in ya. Plus, you can go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme, and find the entire Pat Mayo Experience 2018 Fantasy Football Draft Kit. All the shows listed in chronological order, and it's an easy place to do it. You can check out the description of either this podcast and the video as well to find all of those links on demand whenever you want to do them in any sort of way that you want to listen and or watch them. Any sort of podcast system you can download them on, watch them on YouTube, watch them on the DK Live app, stream it through your TV. I got you covered on this front. So do me a favor, give the episode a like, and we'll get to Jake Ciely from the Fantasy Sports Network, from Fantasy Radio and RotoExperts.com, host of radio shows, his own podcast, maker of rankings, and that's why I have him on, because I'm very close to finalizing at least my V1 version of my rankings, which should come out anytime within like the next 10 to 14 days, whenever I get around to finalizing it and recording that show. But there's a couple players that I'm still a bit wishy-washy on, and I don't really know what to do. So I bring in like one of the most accurate rankers in the business. It's Jake Ciely. What's up, dude?
What's up? You also forgot the most succulent skin to insects, apparently, with them biting my face over the weekend.
I mean, this is what you get for going outside.
I try to avoid it, generally. I'm a European mutt, so basically I'll burn within 30 minutes. So I do generally try to avoid it.
Is that were you by like a lake? Were you just like walking through a marsh? How does that many like mosquitoes just come at you and just feast?
I got the two. The one you can see, the one's covered up. No, there's a pool, my condo association, but the condo, like this entire, so it's a weird setup. There's a condo on the left, as the first two neighborhoods, they get bigger. And then on the right-hand side are like the single family homes. And then behind us in the way back is like the super expensive homes, but all this area is built on marsh ground. So what's now left over is anytime it gets humid, the bugs just come out in droves.
Oh, that's awful news.
Although, do bugs travel in droves? Is that, I don't know.
I don't really know. Maybe colonies, or maybe that's just ants. I'm not particularly sure, but I don't like bugs. Let's get bugs out of here. Get rid of bugs. That's gonna be my platform when I run. I can't run for president. I'm ineligible, but I can run for something. I can run for something, and that'll be my platform. No more bugs. Let's just get rid of them. I think people will be, no more bugs.
Well, you can run for prime minister.
Sure. No more bugs, no more potholes. Boom. The people are on my side when it comes down to
Hey, one of your provinces, did you know this? One of your provinces doesn't even have rats. I think is it Alberta? Or it's one of those.
I don't know. I used to live in Alberta, so I never noticed.
Oh, there's one. Look it up. One of them, they don't have any rats. They actually have like this super heavy border control thing with rats, and there's no rats in the end. Like, I think they're like minuscule amount.
See, you know more about Canada than I do. Anyway, let's get into the footballs. The Roto Experts Premium Package is out now, I believe. So what's the promo code people can get to buy it through you?
All in kid. Very simple. It's my Twitter handle.
There you go. So it's like rotoexperts.com/premium?
No, they haven't done that part yet.
Oh.
Now you're jumping ahead. Maybe by the time anybody views this, they'll have that all set up, but they haven't got the URL. So just put the promo code in, all in kid. I know it's an extra step, but I'll tweet out the link when it's available.
All right, so like I said again, if you want to check out all the other shows, hit the description, check out the Facebook page, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, give it a like, and let's get into this. Ezekiel Elliott is the first player that I don't really know what to do with, because I do my rankings before I look at anything else. Look at other rankings, look at Fantasy Pros, look at your ranks, and really try to talk to anyone about this stuff. So I did my initial rankings, and I'm just way lower on Ezekiel Elliott than apparently everyone else is. Like, people have him as like the number 3 pick overall, the number 4 pick overall. Like, it's not anything against the skill set of Ezekiel Elliott that I'm having the problem with. It's just, I don't think this offense is going to be good. I think he's basically their only good offensive weapon, unless you really think that Dak bounces back in a big way and can rise all tides around him and make some of these receivers better. But Dak Prescott, he's not Aaron Rodgers. So it's going to be a lot of loaded fronts we're going to see from Ezekiel Elliott. Tavon Austin being there, as stupid as this sounds, I think really damages what his upside is in the receiving game. The volume's going to be there on the ground, but I'm talking PPR rankings, and I just don't think that he can be considered on the level of the top 3 guys who do everything.
It's funny you say that, because Ezekiel Elliott in non-PPR, I have said that if you want to take him number 1, I'm not going to tell you you're crazy to do so. The fact
no, hold on a second. That's still kind of crazy. Like you would rather in standard leagues, you would still rather have Ezekiel Elliott over Gurley?
No, I'd say I would never do it. I actually have him 4th in non-PPR, but I'm just saying if you did it, I think this is the first year in a long time where we can say that there isn't a definitive number 1, at least as of today. I'm taking Le'Veon Bell first, but as of today, if you say I'm concerned that he's going to hold out 6 weeks to make sure that he still gets his contract, but he's tired with the situation, actually in his unrestricted free agent situation next year because he doesn't want to play with this whole situation this season, I can see that happening. If you don't want to risk David Johnson coming off 2 years in a row of being injured, I can see that. If you doubt Todd Gurley going up and down, and I granted the year before last was all Jeff Fisher's fault, but if you have doubts about that, I'm not going to say you're crazy. That's all I'm saying. I'm not doing it. I'm just not going to say you're crazy to do it because look at Adrian Peterson and some of the worst Vikings offense that were there when he was there. I think that people get too much caught up in they're going to stack the box. Oh, they're going to sell out to stop him. Oh, they're going to do this. And it's not only the fact that Ezekiel Elliott's a terrific talent. He's also still got a very good offensive line. No, it's not as great as it was when he was a rookie, but it's still a top-end unit. I have no problem with that. But it's funny what I'm saying with PPR that you said that is because he's kind of in a tier of his own for me in PPR. Like it's the top 3, then it's Ezekiel Elliott, and then it's like Barkley, Hunt, and Kamara for me. Like he's just kind of sitting there by himself.
I don't even know if that's going to be the case for me. Like, I think he's on that like Kamara Barkley tier, and I don't even know if he's at the top of that tier. Like, I'm thinking I would almost rather roll the dice, and I know that Kamara is going to come back to the pack a little bit in terms of efficiency, but his workload might go up a little bit, at least for the first 4 weeks when Ingram is out. Then that awful Mark Ingram comes back and throws a wrench into the entire situation. And great. Thanks for coming back, Mark Ingram. No one likes you.
Did you celebrate as soon as you found out he was suspended?
A little bit. But he's now doing the path of what I want out of my fantasy players, so this is really tough for me. I like when guys start doing steroids, because when they come back, they're usually a lot better. So that's always a nice move to pull in the offseason. You know, if you're going to sit out 4 games anyway, who cares about 4 games? But, like, I don't see a huge difference between him and Barkley in terms of where they're at in terms of volume, but I think that Barkley could end up working a lot more out of the backfield unless they're just like, you know what? Shane Vereen, Wayne Gallman, that is who can catch passes. And I just don't think that's going to be the case.
No, and it's not. And the fact is I think the volume could be similar. And the fact is Saquon's going to have more receptions, more yardage, more involvement in the passing game. Tavon Austin, whatever we may joke about him, I agree with you. I think he's a little bit of a threat to the passing game for Ezekiel Elliott. But at the same time, it's really about the touchdowns for me. And if you want to look at the projections, which you can use that code to go find, the real problem here is, I have combined almost 10 touchdowns for Saquon Barkley. Ezekiel Elliott, I have over 11 rushing touchdowns, just rushing touchdowns. And I think that's the real value is when you get into the red zone and the green zone inside the 10-yard line and all that type of stuff, it is Ezekiel Elliott. It's Ezekiel Elliott, Ezekiel Elliott, Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, they're going to find a way to score with him most times. With Saquon Barkley, I mean, arguably he'll be better than anything the Giants have had in the past decade. But at the same time, Odell Beckham is one of your top options. Evan Ingram in his ascension from last year, and then you still have the mix. So it really comes down to somewhat of what you were making the argument against Ezekiel Elliott as being the only option there is kind of the benefit for him when it comes to making touchdowns.
Well, I guess the big thing is, again, I'm not going to argue this from a skill perspective because I do think that Ezekiel Elliott is incredibly skilled, but I don't see that big of a difference between him and Leonard Fournette. In terms of their situation, the volume that they could potentially get, the role that they play on this team as the bell cow back, and handling most of the work inside the 10-yard line, which is incredibly valuable. But, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott's, 20% more skilled than Leonard Fournette? Is that a fair assessment?
I'd say it might even be a little bit less than that. I'll put it this way. Your Leonard Fournette comparison isn't a bad one at all. People don't even realize the fact that Leonard Fournette had 30 receptions, in just 13 games, and people just think that he's I'm the pounder, I'm the lead guy, and I'm not going to do anything in the passing game. If Leonard Fournette plays 16 games, and you tell me at the end of the season that he's separated from Ezekiel Elliott by 10 or 15 points, I'm not going to be surprised.
Well, the big thing that I worry about here is you have the projection for rushing touchdowns of Ezekiel Elliott very high, and that's probably a good number to have, double digit, but let's say he doesn't hit even like where the projection is in terms of touchdowns. I would just worry on a week-to-week basis that I'm relying on a guy who needs to score touchdowns in order to hit his floor. It's the same worry that I have with Leonard Fournette, who I'm also not super high on, that a lot of his fantasy points last season, especially in the first part of the year, were just derived from these gigantic runs which he was breaking out every week, and that's just so hard to do. And then you can say the same thing about Kamara as well, that, is he going to average 9 yards per carry? No, but he probably can average 5 to 6 catches a week, even with Mark Ingram back. And I would think that I would take that floor over anything rather than relying on a guy who week to week could be up and down. It's almost the same case that people make against Julio, is that Julio does so much bulk scoring in like one game and then doesn't do anything for 4 weeks. Now, that's not actually true. That's just like a narrative around Julio Jones, because he is incredibly consistent week to week in terms of floor. It's the upside to hit that only happens like once every 4 games, but he's fine every other. Like, he's going to be 7 for 70. That's not killing you every week. Those 14 PPR points if he doesn't score a touchdown. With Elliott, I just feel like if he doesn't score a touchdown, you're just basically getting rushing yards. You might get 4 points through the passing game, like 2 for 20, something like that, and unless something like incredible happens.
Here's the thing. I'm about to throw water all over that for you. You know how many times Ezekiel Elliott hasn't rushed for 80 yards since he's been in the NFL?
You mean 8 points?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. I assume he does it all the time, but like
he didn't do it once. It was his first start of his career against the Giants, and then obviously the game he got hurt last season. But outside of that, you get 80-plus yards more often than not. He's rushing for about 90 to 100. Rushing, I mean, that's before you even chip in, and he's not a huge receiving option. But you're talking about per week, he's got 2 to 3 receptions and another 10 to 20 yards in the receiving game. So you're telling me his floor every single week is about 10 points. And that's why I'm on Ezekiel. Like, I think that's the underrated part of Ezekiel Elliott, is he arguably has the best floor in fantasy.
See, I don't, not in PPR, he doesn't though, because Bell and Johnson might average that much as a floor through the receiving game alone.
No, see, all right, look, I'll look right now. I'll pull it up. This is the magic of the Google machine. His lowest week ever in PPR is still 10.7, and that was only once. When everywhere else he's 14. Looks like the next 14 was the next lowest.
Okay, and so what are David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell averaging just as receiving options throughout the course of the last 2 years? Like 5 catches for 50 yards ish. But at the same time, you have to worry about, do they only get 60 yards rushing? I think their floors are right on the same page. I think you're giving Zeke too much hate. Well, I just don't think that he should be considered inside the top 4. For me, he's not a top 4 pick. Like, I'd rather have Antonio.
I'll give you top 3.
I'd rather have Antonio Brown. I'd rather have DeAndre Hopkins, and this is why I have you on, to kind of talk this through of like this next year of Kamara, Barkley. I don't think Hunt should be considered up with them. And that's kind of where I'm at with him. Like, would I take Beckham over him? I might.
I can see that. I'm actually looking right now for Le'Veon Bell. So Le'Veon Bell's got 2 games, just like Zeke, 2 games under 14 points. They were both 13. So he didn't hit the 10, but he hit the 13. So, I mean, slightly more. And that's PPR. That's full-point PPR. Look, again, this kind of goes back to my argument in non-PPR about if you want to take Zeke first. I'm not going to tell you you're crazy if you're on the board at 4 and taking – I'm definitely not going to tell you call you crazy if you're taking Antonio Brown. If you're taking Saquon Barkley for the potential that he has just on his skill alone, you're only concerned with Saquon Barkley as the Giants team. I mean, it has nothing to do with Barkley in and of his own right. I mean, the fact of David Johnson talent of being that kind of guy where he comes out of the game, he's rushing for 90 and receiving 40 every single week, and you're getting 13 points before you even chip into the PPR receptions. I mean, that's the kind of skill this kid has. But at the same time, if you want to take him, if you want to take Kamara, I don't have a problem with it. That's the biggest thing is I'm going Zeke just because I love his floor. If you don't want to, I'm not going to say you're nuts. Now, if you knocked him out of that next tier, if you said he doesn't even belong with Hunt and Barkley and Kamara, then I'm going to say you're a little crazy.
No, I think that he's actually significantly better than Kareem Hunt. I have some concerns about Kareem Hunt, but I'm not. When I brought this topic up to you, it's guys that I'm having trouble ranking. I'm not having trouble ranking Kareem Hunt. Like, I know where I'm putting him.
Wait. Here's your problem with Kareem Hunt. Is your problem with Andy Reid?
It's my problem with, well, both Andy Reid and the potential role that, it's same thing with New York. It's the same thing with Cleveland. It's the same thing with Minnesota. It's the same thing with Kansas City, is that there are just so many guys that not everyone can just be the best at every position. And I'm not certain that Charkandrick West isn't going to play a significant role in this passing offense. I saw it last year. And let's not forget that Kareem Hunt went through a stretch where just they weren't using him in the red zone whatsoever. He wasn't scoring touchdowns.
That was Andy Reid. That's okay. I think Andy Reid guys had a
and who is calling the plays once again in Kansas City? It's Andy Reid again.
But he woke up in the second half and stopped being a fool. So I'm just saying, I don't think Andy Reid's going to go back to being stupid this year. At least I'm going to give him at least that much credit.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about Tyreek Hill later because he's on that list. I don't think that Hunt is on the tier of Barkley, Kamara, and Ezekiel Elliott. And this whole Ezekiel Elliott conversation isn't that I think Ezekiel Elliott sucks. It's I'm trying to figure out the first round. When you start digging into these guys in the first round, like, you have to start making, like, what's the downside of Todd Gurley? What's the downside of Le'Veon Bell?
Right.
What's the downside of David Johnson? It just seems like there are more checks, at least in my mind, for Elliott as opposed to that guy's in terms of a safety matter in PPR formats. That's what I'm trying to figure out with Ezekiel Elliott.
And that's where, like, again, Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, just forget those two right now, because if Le'Veon Bell doesn't hold out, there's not even a conversation to be had here. The one where I'll go and say that there's more checks, I think there's just as many X's for David Johnson.
I don't. Unless we're factoring in injuries, and he's coming back often.
That's got to be a factor.
Yeah, but how can we predict what the injury is going to be? Like, he hurt his wrist last year.
No, I know, but he's coming off 2 season-ending injuries. And hold on, let's look at this offense and tell me that you don't have similar concerns to Barkley with the Giants offense. I mean, Sam Bradford is great, and I actually like Josh Rosen a hell of a lot, and I would have no problem if Josh Rosen was under center from week 1. But at the same time, you're talking about one of them with your threat in the passing game being Larry Fitzgerald and your second best threat, David Johnson. You can say,
that's a good thing. That would be a check mark, a positive for me.
I was about to, you'd cut me off. That's just gonna say.
Well, if you're gonna start about your argument being like, well, there are stuff, you don't start with the good thing, you start with the bad thing.
No, but that's the thing is I knew you were going to come back. Well, that's a good thing. He's going to get the second. No, it's not always a good thing if people are honing in on him. You have no other threat that people are like at least keeping on. Like right now, I think Christian Kirk is their second best weapon.
But he might hold on. His name is Coked Out Christian Kirk.
Coked Out Christian Kirk.
Just coked. He's going to go to the end zone, put the ball down, and just give it one of these ones. Woo! He's going to have like 10 of those a year.
So he has to do the Ric Flair with it, too.
Well, yeah, look at Ric Flair. When you get incredibly coked out, there's just woos around, isn't there? Isn't that how that works?
He was coked out every wrestle match?
No, I don't think so. According to that documentary, that was all like post-game stuff.
Oh, that was all after the fact? What was your next thing? You didn't like the pickle Ricky Seals-Jones. What was the one that you had?
Oh, Ricky Seals and Croft?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember.
So anyway, here's the difference, I think, between David Johnson and Ezekiel Elliott as it pertains to defenses honing in on them, is that Ezekiel Elliott, he might get 25 carries a game. And those carries, unless you play in a point-per-carry league, aren't so great. However, if you're David Johnson and the defenses are keying in on you, I don't care if he gets 8 receptions for 0 yards. As long as he's still getting those receptions, which he will with Sam Bradford or Josh Rosen. But particularly with Sam Bradford under center, where he's only going to throw the ball max 7 yards down the field. That's like David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald gold right there, though his receiving stats will bail him out of bad weeks. Plus, his role inside the red zone is no different than Ezekiel Elliott's. He's the one who's going to be touching the ball.
That's a fair point. But honestly, everything you're saying right now is just another classification of why I hate full point PPR.
Well, you can go cry me a river on that one because this is what we're talking about.
I know we're talking about it. I'm going to mention it every time I can.
Fair. All right, next one. Odell Beckham Jr. I just kind of brought him up. So I have Brown and then I have Hopkins. I'm locked in. I know that Beckham is... Okay, I guess my question to you is Beckham closer to Brown and Hopkins, or is he a part of Julio, Thomas, Allen, Devontae Adams, that tier? Or is he actually legitimately somewhere in between? And how does that stack up against the running backs? Like I said, I'm toying with the idea of taking Beckham over Elliott. I need to talk this through some more. I need to think about it some more and see what I want and how my teams are constructed if that's the way that I go in the first round. And I really like Doug Baldwin. I'll have him overranked compared to almost everyone around the industry, but I know that he's going at the back end of the second round, third round, that he's someone I feel comfortable with if I went running back as a wide receiver 1. Now, technically speaking, he could be my wide receiver 3 if the draft broke down a certain way, and I don't know if I would want to do that. So where do you have Beckham ranked, and how should I be looking at this?
So I have Odell Beckham kind of similar to Ezekiel Elliott, and kind of he's floating out there in his own tier, especially if you look at the projection. If you look at the points, there's a 10-point gap from him, and I have Julio in that top 3 because of positive. We go from negative touchdown regression, which actually wasn't even affecting Julio as much as it was everybody else in that Falcons offense, to you can't catch 1,400 yards and only 3 touchdowns. It just doesn't happen. So Julio should bounce back. I have no problem. I've been getting a lot of Julio at the turn if I'm drafting late.
Hold on. I looked at Twitter, and they say Julio Jones sucks.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know that. He's done. He's toast. He's garbage.
What was it, 4 straight years of 1,400 yards? 3 straight years, something like that?
Yeah,
he's terrible. He's terrible, though. Yeah, thanks for playing.
He's miserable. I hate that guy. But yeah, I have Odell Beckham kind of sitting out there in a tier of his own because there's about a 10 to 12 point gap, and then there's a 10 to 12 point gap again after him before you get to Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, and the rest. The obvious concern is what Odell Beckham really comes down to. Here's another one. I'm not going to say don't draft him ahead of Julio Jones. If you want to draft him in front of Julio Jones, no problem, because Odell Beckham can catch double-digit touchdowns. It all comes down to your faith in Eli Manning and the Pat Shurmur situation. The positive, which I'll give you on this, which I tweeted out yesterday, and this is one of the ones where I was actually disappointed I didn't get as many retweets, not because I want people retweeting my stuff, is more so the fact that, like, this is good information in my opinion. Pat Shurmur's quarterback, since Pro Football Focus has started tracking play-action passes since 2012, they didn't do so before that, all of his quarterbacks have ranked inside the top 14. That's including Brandon Weeden in play-action percentage at the times that they're back there. As for Eli Manning, he's never ranked higher than 14th, and he's only done that 1 year. The rest of the time, he's been 27 or worse. The 1 year he was 14th was his best season. It was the season where he threw for over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns from play-action. And he showed a great, like I said, it was his best season of his entire career. If you start asking him to play more play action, which should happen with Shurmur, which should happen with Saquon Barkley, a legitimate threat back there, and he gets that kind of connection with Odell Beckham, which he's got a better touchdown rate, better yards per attempt, better everything in play action, I think Odell Beckham could get into that tier with DeAndre Hopkins. So that's why I have no problem if you want to take him.
Yeah, I got to think about this one some more.
Was that enough stats for you?
No, it was good. I mean, I'm high on Beckham. It just I don't know which way that I'm being pulled, and then I start putting him in. Like, would you rather have Barkley or would you rather have Beckham?
Barkley.
Would you rather?
No question.
No question?
No question.
Like, we have to have some questions about Barkley. He's a rookie coming in. He's playing for the Giants where running backs go to die.
That's the same thing everybody said about Ezekiel Elliott when I wanted to put him in the top 5 that year. So he's never played it down in the NFL.
Yeah, listen, rookies can be good. That's not what I'm saying. But you're saying you have no concerns whatsoever?
No. I said I just have no question. I'm taking Barkley 100 times out of 100 if he's on the board in front of Odell Beckham.
All right. That's the one. I think that's the one where I need to think about. What about Kamara or Beckham then?
That's a toss-up. That's one where I might go like 50-50. I want to diversify a little bit. Like for me,
way to pick a side. Make a fucking pick.
Look, no, but the fact is they're neck and neck. I'm just saying is like if I only have one team, I'll take Kamara because I know where I'm drafting and I'm coming back in the second round. At least I got my bell cow for fantasy purposes running back. And the wide receivers that are in their round 2. I've seen Devontae Adams slip into the middle of the second round, including Michael Thomas as well. If you're going to give me that in the middle of the second round, I'm going to take a running back in the first round every single time unless Antonio Brown's there.
Yeah, that's sort of the thing, too. Like, where I do value receivers very highly, I seem to be one of the only people doing that. So I need to use that to my advantage when constructing my teams, that if I just say, you know what, pick I want to have pick like 7 or 8, although DeAndre Hopkins might fall to me there, who I would take in that spot. But let's say he goes and I end up with one of the running backs. Let's say I get Ezekiel Elliott in the first round and I get him at pick like 7 if that happens. If that's not happening, let's just have a theoretical world where that does happen. Like you said, I could go like Michael Thomas, potentially Doug Baldwin on like the rewrap. That I'm pretty happy with that start if I get it.
And that's the thing. You know me. I make no qualms about it. I've been bell cow running back for my entire career, where I want at least one in the first 2 rounds, and I'm never going to stop doing that, and I'll continue to do so because I win that way. And I know you can play any way you want. You can go 0 RB, even though it was basically 1 year that it worked.
Hold on a second. I did 0 RB for like 5 straight years and had a ton of success. And then the moment everyone started doing it, it killed me off before I finished the point. It killed my market.
No. So basically, look, give it credit to Scott Barrett. He's the one that did it. Pro Football Focus. The 0 RB as a whole worked 1 season. That was an anomaly season. the strategy can still work. You can still win with it. That was the finishing part of my point. It's not saying that it can't work. The only reason I don't do it is because you're just increasing your risk factor basically by doing so, by not getting that. And it can. Look, if you want to go 3 wide receivers or 4 wide receivers and then draft your running backs, you have to hit on those running backs though. And if you do, you're going to probably win, or at least be in contention to win. It's just, again, you're increasing your risk factor. But to come back to this entire point is what you're saying has been happening a lot. I've already done 10 drafts so far. I'm seeing a lot of what you're saying is that because people have started to shift back to running backs, and if you take one in the first round, you could get what is a fringe wide receiver 1 in fantasy, like a Doug Baldwin, we'll talk about Tyreek Hill later. But maybe if you're still a fan of his, those type of wide receivers are falling into the round 3 because the running backs have been pulled up.
Well, the problem is, like, when you look at how ADPs are shaking out, and I know this is going to be different in every single league, it's just when you get to the 3rd round, I don't like any of the running backs going there. Now, if you told me, like, right, Devonta Freeman slips into the beginning of the 3rd round, now I'm very intrigued. I like Devonta Freeman a lot. But, like, I like Alex Collins a lot, who's going after that tier. That's someone that I would be very... If I did 0 RB, and I'm not advocating going 0 RB, but I think that you could potentially go like receiver, running back, receiver, something like that, and start targeting like the... if you can get Devonta Freeman in the 3rd, something like that, or LaShawn McCoy in the 3rd, they're going right around that range, that if you made that your running back 1 and locked in receiver right off the top, I think that you're looking pretty good as a start to your team and a very atypical start to that team. But Alex Collins is someone that I am going to be targeting at the beginning of the 4th round, middle of the 4th round, depending on where he ends up going. I think it's like pick 41 right now, something like that. So end of the 3rd round, whatever it ends up being, he's just someone that I like. I like him more than the Jordan Howards of the world, the Joe Mixons of the world, Derrick Henry. Not anything against them. It's just I feel like that they're going a bit too highly for what I want to do with my teams. I'd rather go receiver in that area too. That there is the potential for me to go receiver to start this draft, just depending on where I end up picking.
Yeah, and of course, it's always going to depend on how things shake out. But the fact, what it comes down to is if you start receiver, and you get Freeman, like you said, in the 3rd round. So I actually got Freeman in the middle of the 3rd round in a draft I just recently. I went Barkley, Evans, and Freeman to start my draft, full point PPR. And I was just shaking my head like, just go ahead and give me the title if you want. But to your point, if you go receiver, and then Freeman doesn't slip to you, like you said, those 3rd round running backs just aren't very appealing because you're either pulling up a rookie, which I don't really have a problem with because there's a couple rookies I'm a big fan of this year. But you're doing that, or you're overdrafting, to your point, somebody like, let's throw out Derrick Henry because I'm not a fan of his, but a Jordan Howard, to your point, who in PPR takes a hit. Or, maybe you get a timeshare running back like Deion Lewis, or that's too high for him. But to my point being is you got a lot of questions with all the running backs as soon as you get to the 3rd round.
Yeah, I guess the problem is with starting receiver, and not getting a running back in the first 2 rounds would be the situation that you're talking about, is that you will then feel the need to overreach on a player that you don't really like very much. And I guess maybe one of the successes that I had with 0 RB when I was doing is that never happened for me. If I didn't like any of the running backs, I just didn't take a running back. Like if Gronk is still out there, I'll take Gronk at that spot. If Zach Ertz is still out there, I'll take Zach Ertz and just solidify other positions that way. And then, you're going to have to get lucky with some of these running backs. Like Alex Collins is one. Like a guy that I would reach on just in the potential that he has a similar role as he did last year, like someone like Kenyon Drake in the 4th round. I don't love that pick, but I do see where there's a path to upside with that pick. Now, I also see where the downside comes in. His name is Methuselah, Frank Gore. But if Kenyon Drake can just play 70% of the snaps, he's going to be really good.
Could, except the team hates the Drake. I don't know why.
Hate the Drake!
Yeah, exactly.
But you can see a situation where Kenyon Drake ends up in a PPR format as number 9 overall running back this year. Couldn't you?
Right.
That's in his range of outcomes.
There's still, Lamar Miller did it on 15 to 17 touches per game when he was with the Dolphins. Actually, there's a scenario when Lamar Miller finishes as a RB1 in PPR because he's done it before with limited touches, and he's done it before without. By the way, Jonathan Foreman, who still might not be ready for week 1. I don't know why everybody's just assuming he's going to be.
I mean, the latest report I read on Donta Freeman was that he was going to be placed on either, I think it was the first 6-game PUP list, not the preseason PUP list, the actual PUP list.
I know what you're talking about.
So, I mean, my problem with Lamar Miller is that later, because Levitan brought this up to me in talking about LaShawn McCoy, is that what happens with him later in the season? Now, I'm not super concerned on that because I can barely project people what they're going to do like 2 days from now, let alone what's going to happen towards the end of the year. But in terms of Lamar Miller, let's say they just run him into the ground in the first 6 weeks because Donta Foreman is out. I think I'd rather just draft Donta Foreman in the last round and just hope he comes back and he's okay.
Maybe. Again, I think right now, if you're drafting Miller, you're getting him in like the 5th or 6th round. I'm going to continually draft Lamar Miller in the 5th or 6th round if you're going to give him to me there, especially in a PPR. But to your point, you could go back, treat him like Steve Smith towards the end of his career, where you know the first 8 games are going to be terrific. Yeah. Just get rid of him after like week 6 before everybody catches on.
Do you think that's a move to make with Kamara?
I think that would be a wise thing to attempt. Like, anytime we throw this out there, like sell high and do this, and so it doesn't mean you have to, and it doesn't mean you have to take the trade offers you're given. But it's a good strategy to use, especially if you're in a less experienced league, because people are going to see what Kamara did towards the end of the last year, when he did it when Mark Ingram was getting less touches, and the fact that he actually outperformed him several games down the stretch, even in touch perspective. And then you talk about the start to the season, and people are going to be going gaga over him, especially if he's like performing the 20-plus points per game like he was. He was actually averaging as much as Le'Veon Bell does, and even more than him for a couple games there with the downside of Ingram. So if that happens, obviously that's a smart move to make.
Well, I mean, we talk about buy low, sell high. I really do think that the contrarian strategy is one of the better ones here, is that when someone gets propped up, unless they're a very obvious sell high, like even through 4 games and then Ingram comes back, people will say sell high on Kamara if he's off to a hot start. But that doesn't mean that Kamara is going to necessarily be not good or potentially better when Ingram comes back. We don't know that. We've seen him be good without Ingram. We've seen him be good with Ingram. That once someone gets talked into being a sell high, there does become some value at some point to looking to buying one of those guys, because you can usually get them for less than market value because people are trying to sell them.
Yeah, that's both sides of it you can play. I mean, you can do both sides of the coin there. It's a very smart move to make. It's the whole buy high, the contrarian situation of it. And you're right, because a lot of times it's not even the fact that, hey, Kamara's not going to be 20-plus points per game. Let's just say that's what he's averaging through the first 4 weeks. But he'll be 18 or 17. It's not like he's going to fall off down to 12 or 13 per game. It's not like he's going to be miserable. So if people think that they're selling high because they're worried about the Ingram return, and they're selling him for 80 cents on the dollar of what he's performing at that point, which is actually still 90% of what he normally does, you're actually, to your point, you're getting a discount on what Kamara truly is.
Next player that I'm having trouble slotting into the rankings is a quarterback. So we'll get back up to some guys at the top of the board. But Tom Brady, so I've seen him, ranked number 1 in some people's rankings. He's usually like number 2 or number 3. I don't think he's going to crack my top 4, maybe number 5. Like, would you rather have Wentz or Brady?
I'd rather have Brady because he doesn't have the injury concern, but I've been snatching up Wentz everywhere because he's going like the 7th, 8th round.
Is he really?
Yes, so far he is. I think everybody's worried that he's going to miss that first week. And to your point earlier,
who cares if he misses the first week? Real big deal on that one.
Guess what weeks are the easiest ones to cover? The first 3 weeks. I could live with him if he's not there for the first 2 weeks. So yes, I actually tweeted about that if you're going to keep giving me Carson Wentz in the 7th, 8th round, I'm going to have 100% ownership on him if that's the case. But to your point is, I'd rather have Wentz. Let's take this another way. I'll take Wentz at the price value every single time of what you have to pay for Brady. If you're just talking about who do I want on a numbers basis, if I had the equal price, I'm going to take Brady every time.
Really? You don't think that Carson Wentz can outscore Tom Brady on a points per game basis?
No, I definitely think he can. But we're also coming off on what if that's – I'm not saying he's Matt Ryan because obviously he's got rushing ability, but that's the first name that comes to mind as a good comparison if we just saw this happen is what if that's his peak year? What if that's the best Carson Wentz we're ever going to see? And Carson Wentz, which is still great, but he falls back into, hey, every single year he's inside the top 10, more of a Kirk Cousins. Like he's in the top 10. Some years he's 5, some years he's 10, some years he's 8. So I think that's the risk where Tom Brady, every time he steps on the field, every single season, he's performing as a top 3 quarterback.
Maybe he's the outlier in all of this, but don't you just worry that he's 41 years old? At some point, this just isn't going to work anymore?
Of course, but I mean, at this day and age, I mean, how many years were we asking Frank Gore to just go away, and he finally did last year? Larry Fitzgerald's 34. We left it. We buried that dude 6 feet deep after 2014, and he's come back, and now he's been a wide receiver 1 for the last 3 years.
Fuck. I'm almost 34. Yeah, I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. I could have a career year this year.
Shut the hell up. I'm older than you.
Yeah, well, it sucks to be you. That's why you're wearing the hat. Secret bald right there. That's why you're wearing the hat. I know your tricks, Jake. But with Brady, like the way that I'm constructed my rankings so far, I have Russell Wilson at number 1. I have Watson at number 2. And I have Rodgers at number 2, Watson at number 3, Cam at number 4, and then Brady. Like, what would you make of the Cam versus Brady argument? Like, I'm factoring in some of like the potential downside that could come along with the Patriots. Now, Gronk's going to be there. Edelman's going to miss the first few games. They drafted a running back. I could see not necessarily a complete switch to a rushing attack, but in games where they have the ability to run, I think they might lean on the run a lot just to give the team a break. If they're up by, let's say they're up 14-0, or they're up 17-0 or 17-3. Let's milk this clock. Let's run this out. Let's make sure that Brady doesn't suffer too much attrition this year because they're playing for a Super Bowl. Let's get everyone healthy. Let's get everyone running on every cylinder for when we need them the most. And then with Cam, obviously, he's all over the place every single week, but the rushing ability is always so intriguing. The weapons have improved. I think this is going to be a pretty good offense with Cam Newton. And I don't want to buy Christian McCaffrey at his price. I don't want to buy Greg Olsen at his price. I don't really know what DJ Moore is going to get up to. I don't quite know what the role of CJ Anderson is going to be. I can just see it being very Jonathan Stewart-esque. Maybe he's better than Jonathan Stewart. Maybe. But I think that's what that role is going to dictate. So the guy that I would want in that offense is just Cam. It's like the Tennessee situation. I have no clue what any of those guys are going to do. Just give me Mariota.
You're saying what I always say, buy the cake and not the icing?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. The fact is, here's the situation with Cam. And if you, Cam right now, I'm actually seeing him going in the 7th round a lot too. Maybe the 6th. He's definitely falling back, at least so far in the experts drafts. I know home leagues are
I was going to say, that is not how that's going to shake out. Quarterbacks are always drafted in average leagues. I mean, we're not all just experts like you, especially me. I'm no expert. Unless it's an expert of being wrong, and then, I'm like the gold standard in the Hall of Fame for that. But in regular drafts, that's not where Cam is going. Cam is going higher. Brady's going higher. Rodgers is going higher. Like, I'm looking at it right now. Tom Brady's going with pick 66. Cam Newton's going with pick 82. Drew Brees is going with pick 78. I'm not as down on Drew Brees as a lot of people are, but I guarantee you in drafts, that pick 78 is going to turn to like pick 41 very quickly.
Right. You're 100, and people drafting this earlier. That's why I hate the term experts too anyway, but people drafting this early are the more advanced leagues anyway, because as you just said with Cam Newton, that's actually 6th, 7th round range. You talk about your home league. Cam Newton, he's not making that far. In most home leagues, somebody's taking Aaron Rodgers in the 2nd round. Somebody's going to do it. That's just what happens. So, yeah, you can push all these quarterbacks up about 2 rounds on average. Like Carson Wentz in your home league is not going to make it to the 8th round. It's impossible. So I understand the Cam Newton excitement. I understand what Cam Newton can do, especially if he gets back to throwing anything close. I don't think he got 30 touchdowns ever again, but if he got anything close to that season where he was throwing like that with the rushing ability, and he was it wasn't even close, him to the number 2 quarterback, that's potentially he has. But you also have the potential of 2016 where, barely throws 20 touchdowns and all of a sudden he's not rushing for 600 or 700. He only rushes for 400. It's the downside of Cam Newton and not knowing what he's going to do every single week, let alone the fact that he gets himself hurt again. So if you want to go Cam Newton over Tom Brady for the ceiling, no problem. I always like Tom Brady. You can pen in for 30+ touchdowns, 4,500+ yards, and that's the appeal with Tom Brady.
If that's the case, should we be moving Gronk up our lists?
No, because I'm never going to – because what Gronk does to your roster is Gronk has to play 15, not even 16, but Gronk has to play 15 games. Otherwise, if he only plays 10 and gets banged up and he starts pulling the Jordan Reed or
but that's also no different than anyone else you take in the first 2 rounds. If they only play 10 games, you're kind of fucked anyway.
It is, because it's what you're sacrificing at the other positions to do so.
Yeah, but his advantage, and the whole point is, if you think that Brady is going to be like a lock for the numbers that he always puts up, there's no one left in New England. Like, a lot of this is going to have to go through Gronk. This could be, let's say he stays healthy for the 16 games, this could be Gronk's best season ever, and if that's the case, he should be pick number 5 in the draft.
No, because there's just so much risk with him, and like I said, it's what you're sacrificing at the other positions. It's similar to
you're sacrificing at the other positions, but you would get such an advantage at one position. It would be the most. He would be, but it would be because he would be the most valuable player at his position, at any position, by a substantial margin. I'm not saying that's going to be the case because I'm throwing a bit of cold water.
Go back to Cam Newton. Cam Newton, if he has that season again, will be the definitive most valuable player at the quarterback position. But you're not drafting Cam Newton in the 3rd round. You're not doing it because what you have to sacrifice. That's what I'm saying here is the fact is what you're sacrificing. Yes, he gives you the biggest leg up versus anybody else, but it's the risk where to go back to the 0 RB, it can work. You're just increasing the risk of your team from day one of it not working. But it's kind of like it's what we do in fantasy too often. Like people, especially when they argue with you on Twitter, you know this. It's the result-oriented argument. It's at the end of the year, like, okay, I took C.J. Anderson in the 1st round that year. I still won a championship. That didn't make C.J. Anderson the right pick in the 1st round. Just because I still won didn't make it the right move. You can win with Gronkowski. It doesn't make it the right move because of what it potentially does to your team. If you want to, go ahead. I'm not going to do it because you're increasing your risk by, I'd say, at least 5-fold by doing so.
Potentially, but listen, if you're going to take Gronk, that's a swing for trying to win your league. And honestly, what's really the difference between coming 3rd and coming dead last in your fantasy
there's definitely
football?
Well, unless there's money on the line where you get money for 3rd place.
Listen, if you play in a league where like you get any sort of decent return for 3rd place, your league can go fuck itself. Like. Pay the league, pay the season, like the regular season winner, pay them, whatever, and then pay the winner of the league a little bit more than that. Then you pay 2nd place less than the guy who wins the regular season.
No, see, I like paying the regular season winner actually less than the actual playoffs just because it's the playoffs. That's why you play fantasy football. I do 1st, 2nd, but 3rd place gets their money back, including the 1st place season winners.
In our league, 3rd place gets shamed.
No, 3rd place you always get your money back for a 12-team league of mine.
We make everyone drop if they lose in the semifinal game, they play the 3-4 game. We make them drop their entire team and just pick up scrubs off the waiver wire to play each other. Because it's meaningless. You can just adjust the rosters after the fact.
That's too much work. I don't want to do all that.
You love work. Work's like your thing.
No, it's definitely not to that level.
Anyway, my entire point on Gronkowski was, and it's not a strategy that I'm going to be employing, mainly because I'm not as big of a believer in Brady as some. But I think it was either Levitan or Kaufman. We're doing these like ADP shows, and we got to Gronk, and I think it was Kaufman who made the point was, if you believe that Brady is going to be Brady, that he always is, that he's going to be over 4,000 yards, he's going to throw 30-plus touchdowns, with the weapons that he has, if Gronk is on the field, he has to be the one doing the heavy lifting here.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to come back to one thing that everybody's forgetting. When Edelman comes back, I don't even care because people are forgetting the bigger part is Chris Hogan was a wide receiver 1 when he got hurt last year. Not 2, not 3. He was 8th overall when he got hurt. People are just forgetting that Chris Hogan is a huge part of this offense if he is also on the field just like Gronkowski.
Sure, but now you have 2 guys.
And then Edelman's coming back in week 4 or 5, whatever week it ends up.
I mean, you said that David Johnson's an injury concern. You don't think that Julian Edelman, although the PEDs again really help. I really like that move, and his appeal could go through, and he might get like 2 games or 1 game or no game, something like that.
Well, I'll give you one thing: is there's no more injury-prone, injury-riddled core of wide receivers than you have with the Patriots.
This is true. All right, so Brady, I'm going to think about the him versus Cam, where they fall into the rankings inside the top 5. But I'm pretty settled on Wilson, Rodgers, Watson as 1, 2, 3.
I actually have Brady 2nd and Cam 4th, and my points separating them is 5.4.
Okay, so just whatever preference that you have, basically, depending on which one you like the most, they're all within the same tier.
Yeah.
All right, next guy, AJ Green. So I talked about Beckham.
That's your boy.
I do love AJ Green. I just feel like he's perpetually undervalued. But this is the same sort of conversation that I had with you about Odell Beckham, but on the other end. So is he a part of that tier of Julio, Thomas, Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams? That also includes AJ Green. Is AJ Green also a part of that tier? Is he the last guy in that tier? Is he a bit higher than that? Because per ADP, Mike Evans is the next guy, and I don't really like Mike Evans at all, but I would much prefer to have AJ Green than Mike Evans. I prefer to have Doug Baldwin over Mike Evans. That's just me. That's how I roll. But is AJ Green, should he be considered as a part of that tier, or is he on a tier on his own after that? Because we've seen some attrition. We've seen this offense. The offensive line is, I guess, a little bit improved, not vastly improved. So what's that really going to do? They can focus so much on him that I think all the problems that people have with Julio Jones are actually AJ Green problems.
No, I think that's interesting that you say that. The problem with AJ Green that I have is the quarterback. Andy Dalton is in a downward descent here. He's just continuing to fall off. And I'm actually surprised the Bengals weren't more aggressive in finding their next quarterback of the future here, because I think Dalton's time is limited. And when it comes down to AJ Green, I'm with you. I've always been a fan of his, and I always thought he came at a value because people just never gave him that respect of the tier of what we're talking about here. I do for even this season. I still have him on a tier with Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, and that's it's actually a smaller tier for me. I have 4 wide receivers. It's those 4: Thomas, Adams, Green, and Allen. Those
but you have Beckham and Jones in a tier above.
Right. Well, Beckham's by himself.
Remember? Yeah, I'm just kind of lumping all those guys after the top 2 in together.
And that's fine. And you know what? Mike Evans is behind them with T.Y. Hilton, Doug Baldwin. And if you want to pull him up, I'm not going to say you're crazy. I just like AJ Green's consistency, even with poor quarterback play, because AJ Green is just a monster. And for the fact of what you're talking about with the Julio Jones concerns, I can see it. But AJ Green for me is just going to be, even if Andy Dalton only goes out there and throws 3,800 yards and 23 touchdowns, AJ Green, even at that, is still going to get 1,200 yards and 6 or 7 of them.
Yeah, and the good thing about AJ Green right now is that he's slipping. Everyone's had AJ Green on their teams over the years that no one really wants him anymore. That you could, if you play in a 12-team league, it's a chance you could get him with the last pick of the second round. That's on the table.
You know what AJ Green is? AJ Green's what the complaint of people had about Michael Thomas last year. You remember everybody was complaining about Michael Thomas?
But Michael Thomas is only putting up 8 catches for 80 yards every week. He sucks. Yeah,
Michael Thomas only finishes as the top 5 wide receiver, but yeah, he's garbage or whatever. That's the AJ Green thing. I think you people, to your point, have owned AJ Green, and it's like, where's the 200-yard game and 2 touchdowns like Amari Cooper does? Because he does that once every season. Like they don't see that, and they just kind of like, whatever, AJ Green. Because AJ Green did that, what was it, like 2 or 3 years ago? He had that one monster game, and everybody got super excited because they won the week just because of AJ Green. But he never really, that's not really who he is. He's kind of more like you just said. He's the Michael Thomas where, it's so disappointing for me to get guaranteed 8 non-PPR points and guaranteed 13 PPR points every single week.
Who else is going to take targets away from him in Cincinnati? Like, is John Ross going to be a thing this year?
He could be. Look, John Ross, though, he's a deep threat. I mean, he could get separation.
I know. I'm just talking about on the whole. Like, who else is actually physically getting
preparation H?
Yeah, exactly. Just rub it right on there, decreases. I mean, it's also preparation H. Fun fact, quick inside broadcasting tip. If you got bags underneath your eyes or puffy eyes, put some Prep H under there when you go to sleep. Boom. Coming up.
Should I put some preparation H on the bug bite?
I don't know if it works that way. Let me get a good look at that.
It might get bigger.
I'm going to say, you just need some makeup. You'll be fine.
Like I'll put some on it and all of a sudden it'll be like a huge giant bubble in my face. No, the fact is, yes, Ross could get into the mix. Obviously, he missed the entire season last year, but he could be a downfield threat for them. But you're looking at this team, it's really, my first answer was going to be nobody, because Tyler Eifert isn't playing 3 games?
Yeah, well, that's sort of the thing. Like when I project out AJ Green and what he's going to do, the big thing with me is going to be market share. What's the potential market share for AJ Green? That's why
probably going to be top 5 in the league.
And if that's the case, then he has to be on that tier. Does that make him better than Devontae Adams?
No, because I think Devontae Adams could be right there with him this season.
Okay. Does that make him better than? No, I turned off the thing. Does that make him better than Michael Thomas?
No, because Michael Thomas, I think, is a little bit better. Well, not a little bit, but a better offense.
Okay, so is LaFell still in Cincinnati?
Yeah, for whatever that matters.
So LaFell's there, Eifert's there, Ross is there.
Yeah, exactly. Giovanni Bernard, Joe Mixon in the backfield, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So yeah, 30% market share is very much on the table, and if you're going to get almost anyone in the league at a 30% market share, that's one of the main reasons that I'm very high on Doug Baldwin and not on Mike Evans, is the whole market share argument when it comes between the two of them. Like, I'm curious to see where Mike Evans shakes out with this Jameis suspension, because I actually don't think it matters if Jameis is suspended for Mike Evans is going to do what he's going to do, regardless of whether it's the Fitzmagic, whether it's Mike, or whether it's Jameis Winston. But if he starts taking like a round hit in ADP because people are freaked out, I mean, then I would actually kind of be in on Mike Evans. I just happen to think he's being overdrafted.
No, I'm with you. I didn't move Mike Evans at all. The big one is the factor is Ryan Fitzpatrick has a thing for O.J. Howard and not Cameron Brate. I think that's the only intriguing part of no Winston.
Well, my entire case around Mike Evans to begin with anyway is that there are just too many goddamn guys in Tampa Bay. That he can't have a 30% market share because they have six other people to throw to. And I understand that he is better than the rest of those guys. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden he just gets 50% of the targets. Like, the year that I was really big on Mike Evans, he was the only game in town. All they did was just drop back and throw it to Mike Evans. That's off. Like, it was like the pass at the will offense from Fresh Prince. Like, they don't have that anymore. They have Chris Godwin, a.k.a. Carlton, coming in and stealing the ball.
What a callback. I forgot about that episode.
That's a great episode. The court is a legit 18 feet wide.
If that.
I
think they took half a basketball court, cut off about, like you said, about like 3 feet from the side, and then that's what they played on.
Although I did appreciate Will kissing the cheerleaders midway through the game, going over to the crowd, giving the woot 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 like Arsenio. It was fantastic.
So many things like that. Like, talk about Zach Morris and say about. There's so many things that like you're not getting away with today. Like, people forgot Zach Morris tricked a girl's sister who was barely in high school to like go out on a date with him.
Sick. Sweet move in the 80s from Zach Morris, who was probably like a legit 31 at the time, because that's how TV works. And listen, if we're going to talk about Saved by the Bell, I mean, Zach Morris was able to freeze time at one point.
That is a very good point.
That's outside the box thinking right there. So, next guy, Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is going around the range of receivers of T.Y. Hilton, Larry Fitzgerald. He's going ahead of Stefon Diggs. Adam Thielen is there too. And I'll even throw Josh Gordon onto this list because Josh Gordon is going right around. He's another guy that I'm having a lot of trouble ranking right now. The thing with Tyreek Hill is I feel like you're always banking on him to continue to punch above his weight. And especially in this offense, if I'm going to make a case against Mike Evans that I think there are just simply too many mouths to feed and that's making him overdrafted, kind of say the same thing with Tyreek Hill. Like, can Kareem Hunt be a top 10 pick? Can Travis Kelce be a top 30 pick? Can Tyreek Hill be a top 30 pick as well? Like, I don't think the answer is yes to those questions, especially when you add in Sammy Watkins to the mix, who apparently no one wants anymore. Jake, is it finally happening? That everyone has finally turned their back on Sammy Watkins? Because me and you have been so anti-Sammy Watkins the past few years, and everyone's like, oh no, this is the year where Sammy Watkins really breaks out. Now, I don't think that there's a Sammy Watkins breakout happening, but where you can buy him in like the 8th round now, I think that's just a significantly better buy than Tyreek Hill.
I'm laughing so much because, yes, this is the first time in, I think, the entire career of Sammy Watkins that I own him. And I've taken him a couple times because he's there in the 8th round. And at that point, it's all upside because you go back to Tyreek Hill, you want to talk about market share. The dude didn't even have a 20% market share on this team. So, and the fact that the production that he had on his snap, like, the thing is this kind of goes back to before, too, with the result. And, I got so many people last year. I told you so about Tyreek Hill. And I was like, you know what? Yes, you're right when it comes to his fantasy production. But my point of what my argument was still remains is that you can't be that productive on that level of a target share, on that level of reception basis. I know he's explosive, but that's not normal. To ask Tyreek Hill to do that all of again, especially with the touchdowns, is asking a lot of anybody, and I just don't see it happening again. Let's also take in the fact here that Patrick Mahomes could have a better rapport with Sammy Watkins. If you told me, here's Tyreek Hill, here's Sammy Watkins, just from a pure NFL football player standpoint, I'm going to take Sammy Watkins. He is the more complete and more skilled wide receiver. Tyreek Hill is more explosive, sure. But all around, Watkins is the better talent. So if you told me that and you have a situation with Pat Mahomes coming in as the quarterback and all of a sudden he develops a rapport with Watkins, it's not going to surprise me. Now, am I going hard after Sammy Watkins and taking him to the 5th or 6th? Absolutely not. You said you can get him in the 8th. I'm also, though, off on Tyreek Hill of where he's going. And that's the bigger issue is I don't want Tyreek Hill for that price because he's still at best secondary in share behind Kelsey. And now, again, you're hoping that he stays in front of the addition of Watkins, or even if he stays in front of him, that Watkins doesn't pull that target share even further back. So I'm with you, and I'm laughing again because, yes, I actually own a decent amount of Sammy Watkins this year because it's finally the time where everybody hates him. So you know what? I'll take him.
Now, Tyreek Hill is the type of player, and you talk about the explosion and the speed that he brings, that he's always someone who's going to have big outlier games and gigantic games and score really long touchdowns. And he is the type of player, a lot like Kamara last year, where the big talk about Kamara is that he was so efficient on the limited amount of touches that he got, is that there's no way that he can continue doing that. He has to come back a little bit, and you just hope the volume increases. That's why he's still a top 10 pick. With Hill, if he just has a marginally outlier season the other way, in terms of like the negative instead of the positive, he could be a really bad player. Now, because of his skill set, he can still just be a really good player and be worth this pick. That's just really hard to bank on.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I'll give you a good comparison. Is Deshaun Jackson in his prime. Is you have you're going to get 4 or 5 games where it's like, yeah, awesome, terrific. You're also going to get 4 or 5 games where you're like, what the hell just happened? Why do I have 3 points on my box score from this guy? And then the other, that's 12. So the other 4 games, it's going to be like, okay, whatever. He had a decent day.
Well, just look at the guys around him. Would you rather have Tyreek Hill or Adam Thielen? Like, I don't even think that's close. I'd rather have Adam Thielen.
Every time, I'll take Adam Thielen. And I'll take Stephon Diggs, too.
So would I. Would you take, I would take Allen Robinson over Tyreek Hill.
I would absolutely
I would take Demaryius Thomas over Tyreek Hill.
That one I could go either way.
No, that's not going either way. Demaryius is a nice sweet spot for ADP right now at 43. Like I love that value. I feel like that's 100 catches just waiting to happen.
Well, and here's the thing: is you go back to the 2 guys we were just talking about. Guess who was Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs before they were even a thing? Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders.
His name isn't Emmanuel Sanders; it's Manny Sanders, and around here we like to call him the Colonel.
Fair enough, but I've been scooping up a hell of a lot of Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel. My only frustrating part is that I take Demaryius Thomas at a terrific value, and then Emmanuel Sanders is still there where I want to take him, and I was like, I don't want both of them though.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Josh Gordon. People are very torn on Josh Gordon. He's either a top 10 pick or he's like outside of the top 30, and I don't even PPR wise. Who do you think ends up with more points, Josh Gordon or Jarvis Landry?
I'm actually taking Josh Gordon in both formats.
Okay. Is he better than Tyreek Hill?
Yes.
Is he better than, let's say we knew Andrew Luck was healthy. Is he better than T.Y. Hilton? Because I'm glad you said that because Luck is just a really difficult one to figure out. He'll be the last guy that we kind of touch on here when we get to it, but if we see him play a preseason game and we see that the arm strength is back, yes, T.Y. Hilton's ADP is going to significantly move up, as it should. But let's say we don't know. Let's say you're drafting right now, which would be kind of ludicrous, but let's just, we're playing in a hypothetical world. We're playing fantasy football. We might as well have some hypothetical discussions about this. You're drafting today. Would you rather take Josh Gordon or T.Y. Hilton, knowing that Luck could be healthy and T.Y. Hilton you're getting 15 picks of value on?
Yeah, see, as of today, I'll take T.Y. Hilton. And I've actually been taking a good amount of T.Y. Hilton. I know it's injury optimism, and it's definitely scary after last year where, Andrew Luck will be back by week 1, and then week 4, and week 8, and then week what the hell happened? So obviously there's a concern there, but I was so quick to answer. You said, I'm glad you said that. With Andrew Luck, the situation here is T.Y. Hilton, if he's playing with him, it's not even just, hey, he's a wide receiver 1. He's in contention for top 5, and that's the production he puts up. And T.Y. Hilton is a guaranteed at least top 10 if it is the 100% Andrew Luck we know. Especially, you want to talk about target share. I mean, honestly, I think there's a case for Deion Kane, the rookie wide receiver they drafted late, to be their second option on this team because it's Chester Rogers and Ryan Grant who got kicked to the curb as soon as the Ravens found out Michael Crabtree was available. So I think that if you're looking at this, T.Y. Hill is just going to absorb targets every single week as much people think about him as only a big play threat. So I'll take Hilton, but if we're talking about anybody else in that conversation, I'm actually a huge Josh Gordon fan this year.
Josh Gordon or Allen Robinson?
Gordon.
Really?
Yes. Because here's the thing about Jarvis Landry.
Hold on a second. Maybe this is sort of the tier that I should be here are the 3 guys that I'm having trouble with. I already mentioned Tyreek Hill, and I'd rather have Gordon than Tyreek Hill. But Gordon, JuJu, and Amari Cooper. I think that they're all 3 similar type players in terms of what their upside is versus what potentially could be their downside. There's no lock that Josh Gordon's going to be good.
No, there's just a lot. The fact that his talent is there. It just comes down to the quarterback play, and he's got arguably the best quarterback he's ever had, and he put up an amazing, dominating, fantasy goldmine performance with Jason Campbell at quarterback for most of that season. So I'm full on the Josh Gordon. I don't even think Amari Cooper deserves to be in that conversation. And JuJu Smith-Schuster is, look, at best, he's the third option on that team. And hey, go back and look at my rookie profile. I was a JuJu Smith-Schuster fan. At the same time, we're always talking about the third option behind Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. And I know that it's Ben Roethlisberger. I know this offense works a lot of time, but you still have an offense that doesn't work on the road for some reason. And he's still the third option. I'm just never going to invest in the third option when you're going to give me the number one as a choice.
Amari Cooper's a number one. and he has the corpse of Jordy Nelson playing on the other side of the field.
Well, that actually could help him. Honestly, you know what? If you're going to give me 140 targets for Amari Cooper, I'll invest as a wide receiver too in some points. And I'm one of the staunchest Amari Cooper haters out there.
Yeah, just with Gordon, I feel like he's being like. Can we both agree he's being overdrafted at pick 29?
That's a little pricey for me.
It is a bit pricey. Like, do I really want to take
all the risk? Which, I hate to do that.
Yeah. I mean, where was Terrell Pryor going in last year's drafts?
Probably right around that spot.
Like, I just feel like this is like you can almost circle this as like potential complete wide receiver flameout range.
No, look, Josh Gordon has wide receiver one potential, but you don't have to pay. Like, don't pay that price because that's his ceiling. Anything that goes wrong, you just absorb. And like I said, don't buy all the risk. You're buying all of it. And I understand. Especially in the first and second round, it's tough to avoid buying all of it. But especially once you get into the third, there's a lot of picks like Josh Gordon where you don't have to do so. And I love Josh Gordon. I want Josh Gordon in all my teams as my wide receiver too. And to get him as my wide receiver too, I'd rather be at the 3-4 turn than the 2-3 turn because, again, I don't think Jarvis Landry is going to have the season people are expecting because he's basically – you look at his career, it's a 1-to-1-to-1. It's how many targets equals how many receptions equals how much fantasy production. You just give him more targets, he does better. Less targets, he does worse. It's just Jarvis Landry is very simple in that fact, and that's why he's so trustworthy in PPR. But if you're talking about an offense led by Tyrod Taylor, and I do think Baker Mayfield takes over, but I think more towards the end of the season, Tyrod Taylor's not throwing for 4,500 yards. He's not throwing for 30 touchdowns. He's not throwing 30 times or 30 completions a game. That's not who Tyrod is. So if you drop back Jarvis Landry, I'm going to want the person who's better on a per-touch basis, and that is Josh Gordon.
Last three receivers I want to talk about. Julian Edelman, Robby Anderson, and Marquise Goodwin. I don't know how high and or low to rank these guys. Like, some people are just like, Marquise Goodwin's going to be no good because Pierre Garçon's going to do everything. Then other people are like, wow, Jimmy G threw to Marquise Goodwin every time last year. He's going to be fantastic. Like, I'm somewhere in between those two things. Like, I would rather have Garçon over Goodwin. I'm pretty confident about that. I think he's just a better receiver. But am I overlooking the potential impact that Marquise Goodwin could make this season? And he's going outside pick 100 right now.
No, I think that is fair. I actually have Pierre Garçon higher in non-PPR too. I think people are forgetting what Pierre Garçon has done and can do, and forgetting what kind of he's kind of a more yards per catch than Jarvis Landry, but not exactly the volume of Landry has been seen. But he got close. Let's also not forget what he did with Robert Griffin. I know that's a long time ago, but we were talking about he was the passing game when it came to the receivers for that team. Pierre Garçon has plenty of talent. Pierre Garçon is, if you like Jimmy Garoppolo, why are you forgetting about him? That's been my biggest question so far, because to your point, everybody's talking about Marquise Goodwin. Look at how much Garoppolo loved him, and he's so explosive and all. Goodwin's still a little bit limited. He just is a little bit limited in his receiving ability as a wide receiver. Pierre Garçon can do more. So,
and how much of this Goodwin stuff was just because Pierre Garçon was hurt?
That's a fair question to ask. And for all the people that love George Kittle and all, but to your argument to go back to before is, this all of a sudden we're going to have Marquise Goodwin, Pierre Garçon both as a top 25 wide receiver, and Jimmy Garoppolo as a top 5 quarterback, and George Kittle as a top 10 tight end. And like how many things are really going to happen? Like, everything's going to be amazing for the 49ers. Like, it's going to be the freaking Joe Montana offense all of a sudden.
Edelman. With the suspension, if you were drafting today, I actually do think that suspension gets beaten down. I don't think it's going to last the 4 games. I'd say, I'll give you a guess first. What do you think? How many games is Edelman suspended?
3?
I'm going to say 1.
Really?
Yeah.
I think he only gets 1 taken off.
No, I think they screwed around with his sample. The Patriots are good at this stuff and getting it beaten out. When they bit the bullet on Brady and made him sit out the 4 games, and then it turned out that he shouldn't have been suspended whatsoever, I think they're going to treat the Patriots, give him a little pat on the back here and cut that one down. What do we make of Edelman if he comes back? Is he Julian Edelman again? Because if he is, if he's Julian Edelman again, he's going to get pick 69. Nice. He's going after Tyreek Cohen. Like, that's ludicrous.
I 100% agree with you. Julian Edelman, so for right now, with missing 4 games, I still have him at wide receiver 24. The fact is, Julian Edelman is just, if he's on the field, he's a monster, and especially in PPR. He's part of the reason I hate PPRs, because 13 receptions for 80 yards and 21 fantasy points. Get the hell out of here with that nonsense. But if I'm playing a PPR, I'm going to enjoy Julian Edelman on my team every single time. And for your point is, if it gets down to even 2 or 1, I mean, that's just insane value at that point, because go back and look at the times that Julian Edelman played 15 or 16 games, and in PPR, he was in the wide receiver 1 conversation.
Yeah, he's going after Jarvis Landry. Like, these are the similar type of players and how they accumulate their fantasy stats. And if we think that the target share and targets overall go down for Jarvis Landry, and Edelman can just walk back into his role, or potentially see an increase in his role, now that would increase his ability to get hurt, because he just has more action going on all the time. But the season that Jarvis Landry put up last year could be Julian Edelman's season this year, but potentially more, because there are so few options in New England left.
No, 100%. And the fact is, let's go back to the question. Who would you rather have? You're talking about Jarvis Landry or Julian Edelman. You want Tom Brady or Tyrod Taylor throwing you the ball?
Now, I've seen people on Twitter argue the answer is Tyrod Taylor. So underrated.
He's amazing. He hasn't been given a chance yet. You know,
very, very efficient quarterback. Probably way better than Tom Brady.
He hasn't had this kind of talent before.
Robby Anderson is actually like my main keeper in my keeper, not my main keeper, my most valued keeper. He's like a last round pick in my keeper league. And I'm for sure going to keep him. But as it pertains to like redraft formats, what do we expect? Like, is he going to be suspended? Like, all the news around him and like his arrest, then his not arrest, then he didn't show up to court, and like it seems like a lot of it just cloudy information surrounding Robby Anderson right now. But if he's on the field week 1 and he's not suspended, and whether they start Darnold, whether they start Bridgewater, whether they start Josh McCown, I would prefer Josh McCown just based on the rapport that I've seen with him and Robby Anderson. Like, what do we project him to be? Now with little Quincy Enunwa being back and them retooling this offense a little bit, Terrell Pryor's there now, does he have the same type of potential as he did last season?
I'm doubtful on that, because kind of this conversation we've been having all day today is, what is the target share going to be for him? I mean, he's a great he's their best downfield threat. Is he a complete wide receiver? No. Is Quincy Enunwa going to be in the mix? Very likely. He's kind of a hybrid wide receiver tight end for this team. If you remember from past seasons, they did kind of use a tight end because they were using Quincy Enunwa in that kind of mixture role there. And then you still have Jermaine Kearse, and then you still have the 15 rookie wide receivers from years past that they've been trying to, like Hanson and like go down to.
Oh, my main man, Darius Stewart.
Yeah, all of them. They're already talking about he might even not make it to training camp. And so, like, the fact is you just look at it. They actually have 13 wide receivers on the roster right now. They had 17 at one point. So, you know, it's just the fact. Don't forget Terrell Pryor's there, although he's not healthy right now. I just don't know where the snaps are going to definitely be for anybody on this team. Now, Robby Anderson would be my favorite as of today. He is the number 1 wide receiver list. If I listed on paper who's the target share and who's the number 1 wide receiver, starts with Robby Anderson. But to come back to the initial question is, I don't know that he's not suspended. Like, I don't see how he's not with what the NFL's track record is, given what happened. How do they not at least give him 2 or 3 games?
Yeah. 2 games would be my guess, but who knows? I mean, I just said that Julian Edelman's going to be suspended 1, so I mean, I could be way off based on all of this.
Well, Zay Jones too. Zay Jones running around naked in hotel rooms, and
I forgot about that. That was hilarious.
Yeah, busted his foot up, running around naked in a hotel.
Also, underrated part of that video, Zay Jones, great ass, good looking stuff there. I wish my ass looked like that.
Black?
Well, I mean. No, but, you know, in terms of firmness and shape, it just maybe just, you know, I would like to have the physique of Zay Jones is probably what I'm saying, rather than the physique of me.
I mean, wouldn't we all?
Hey, it'd be nice. It looks very effortless too. Anyway, last guy, Andrew Luck. He can throw a football like 3 yards. I saw it on a video. So I don't know if he's all the way back, but he's at least taking steps towards getting there. I did think Josh McDaniels not going to the Colts and then saying, no dice, I'm out, is worrisome about the long-term health of Andrew Luck, but he's just a very difficult guy to rank right now. Do you rank him like you don't know? Do you rank him like he's going to be bad? Or do you rank him like he's Andrew Luck?
As of today, it's the injury optimism. I'm ranking him as if he's playing 16 games, with 16 games being it's not 100% the Andrew Luck we knew. So maybe it sounds like I'm trying to straddle the fence, but I mean, it's what you have to do as of today. Like, I'm going to rank him as if he's ready to start this season. He is throwing a football. I know people, I threw a high school football. High school football is not that different from an NFL football. It's not like it's like a Nerf football at half the size. Like come on, people. So, like, all that I'm throwing out there. He's throwing a football. That's all I care about. He's actually doing football things this year, unlike last season. If he's ready for week 1, he has top 5 potential. I actually have him right now sandwiched between Carson Wentz and Matthew Stafford at 7th. And I think that's a fair spot for him. I mean, I don't want to give too much away from the package, but 4,200, almost 4,300 yards and almost 30 touchdowns with, another 200 rushing. And that's who Andrew Luck is. Again, that's probably more of like 90% Andrew Luck of what his true potential and his true, we've seen it before. We've seen numbers much better than that. But, we also have to talk about there's a rust factor. There's is it 100% shoulder or is it 90 and it's never going to be 100 again? So I'm not trying to straddle the fence, but I think that's the smart way to play it.
Yeah, right now he's going in the 10th round, and that's with the confusion around him. I think if he's just going in the 10th round, whether he's hurt or not, you just take him. And if he's no good, then he's no good. You lost your 10th round pick, big deal. If not, you could have a guy that could potentially be the best quarterback.
No question about it. And if you're taking him in the 10th round, what are you really sacrificing at the other positions? Not much of anything. And then you finish things off by waiting and taking Matt Ryan in the 14th round that is going there this year.
I think I'd rather take Mariota than Matt Ryan, but I get your point.
Yeah, whoever you want.
Or Patrick Mahomes, although he's not lasting long.
Patrick Mahomes going like the 6th round.
Yeah, people love Patrick Mahomes this year. I get it. I absolutely understand why people like him, by the way. I just don't know.
Him and Garoppolo, they're going in like the top 7 rounds, and that's not even a joke.
I think I would rather have Mahomes than Garoppolo.
Oh, because he's a rushing ability.
Yeah. I'll probably end up with more luck because those guys are going too highly. Although I have Russell Wilson ranked as my number 1 quarterback, and like he's going in like the 6th round too. Like I'd rather just have him.
I've almost bit on Russell Wilson a couple times, but it's the fact that I still see Carson Wentz sitting on the board. I'm like, you know what? Guess what? I'm waiting another 2 rounds and getting another Carson Wentz.
I just think I'm going to, on a lot of my season-long teams, not that I'm playing a whole bunch of season-long anymore, but I think I'll have a lot of Wilson-Doug Baldwin combos. Like that just feels, that feels right to me this year for a lot of upside.
Do not have a problem with that. And funnily enough, I end up with a couple of Jeffrey Wentz combos because people are off Jeffrey.
Yeah, why are people off Jeffrey?
I think it's kind of similar to the Michael Thomas factor, but if you look at last season, at the end, it wasn't a very great season on the whole for Alshon Jeffery.
It wasn't, but we now that it's his 2nd year in this offense,
right.
They can lean on him a little bit more, and like they got rid of some peripheral. Like even losing someone like Trey Burton, for example, just opens up more targets for everyone else. Like no more Torrey Smith. Like it doesn't seem like a significant thing, but it could really help concentrate the targets onto Jeffrey, onto Aguilar, and onto Ertz.
Well, it's, Corey Clement, man. He's going to dominate that offense.
Well, Darren Sproles is back. That actually worries me.
Thank you. I don't know why everybody's ignoring this fact that Darren Sproles is back. I've been hammering that point home when people are taking Clement in like the 7th, 8th round. I'm like, what are you doing? Darren Sproles is back. Darren Sproles in this offense has always been the Darren Sproles. Like, he is arguably one of the best pass-catching running backs in the league. And, you look at Doug Peterson, there's 2 tweets that was out by Graham Barfield and Mike Tagliere, who were talking about the fact that the most snap counts under Doug Peterson, Sproles has actually led all that backfield. And if you look at it, Barfield followed that up and said that no running back has ever played more than 60% of the snaps under Doug Peterson.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to throw Ajayi on this list of guys that I'm having.
That's another reason to stay away from him, too.
Yeah. The point was going to be that, I'm not having trouble ranking Jay Ajayi. He's just not super high in my ranking. It's like you're probably not going to talk me into that one, although it seems like you wouldn't be talking me into that one anyway. But
no,
yes.
I'll call the people taking him in the 3rd round bananas.
So I talked to Darren Sproles at Super Bowl week, and I was talking to him about his knee. He's like, yeah, I'm fine now. He's like, I can't play in the game. I was like, you gonna be ready for the season? Like, you coming back? He's like, yeah. He's like, I'll be 100% by the. And if he is 100%, you're right. Like, he's going to be on the field. He's not going to be an impact fantasy player, but he can certainly take away fantasy opportunity from the other guys, and that's the part. It's like the Mike Evans thing. There are just so many guys that it's nothing against him. It's just there are people taking away his upside.
It's 100%. You're going to have to do more with your limited amount of snaps. Could you have a 13-touch game for 100-plus yards and a touchdown because you made one huge play? Absolutely. Could you also have several weeks of 11 to 13 touches and 50, 60 yards and be kind of like, hey, a flex running back at best? Very likely.
All right. Jake Ciely, pimp the pod, pimp the show, pimp it all.
Yeah, On Target podcast, the award-winning On Target podcast, which we'll have you coming on soon. It's only myself now. It's myself and guests. It's actually still a really great time. I don't care what anybody else says, and everybody seems to like it. But rotoexperts.com, you mentioned the exclusive edge package. All in kid gets you the discount, and I'll tweet everything else out. That's really all that matters.
I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you can find all the links to all of the fantasy football content. Put some golf up there, too, if that's your bag. It's my bag. Maybe it's your bag, too. Maybe it's your golf bag. I don't know. Or you can just catch it all on Twitter or in the description of this video or podcast. Please give the video a like. It goes a long way to help keep this show free of charge. Same with the podcast. Rate, review, spread the word, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!